All right, so before we have Dr. Baligh R come up and give what will be great keynote remarks, I want to start the morning off with having a conversation with you about something that's near and dear to me as one of those who represent a success story of a great specialized care system, the spinal cord injury and disease system of care. Before I get into exactly what the topic is, though, I want to ask a couple of questions. What are some of the reasons why one becomes a clinician? Why did you choose to become a healer? Money? Raise your hand if it's money. Bunch of millionaires in here, right? Social status, everybody respects a doctor. Job security. You're always going to have people focused on getting better, so you need people in those industries, and if you're a healer, you've got some job security if you do it well enough, and it's probably a combination of all of those. But again, from the perspective of the patient, I'm willing to bet that somewhere on that list of what brought you into your respective discipline was a sense of compassion. What is compassion? It's a feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune. Who are we talking about? People who have become disabled, been diagnosed with a disease, but it's accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. So that puts you in a position of the healer. And as clinicians, that's what you do. You literally alleviate suffering. So by show of hands, how many of you are VA clinicians? Among you, who can undoubtedly say that you demonstrate compassion in your clinical work with each and every patient you touch? Each and every one of them. It's not a lot of hands. It should be more than that. You should all be raising your hands, or you try. At least you aspire to show compassion. Show of hands if you aspire to show compassion with each and every patient. All right? So, tell me this. Then why are we in this position where you enjoy the privilege of providing care for our nation's bravest, our heroes? Is your system in a position now where it may go away? Why? We're not talking about the expansion of care. Dr. Yehia is going to talk about an excellent plan VA has to make it more accessible. I'm specifically talking about the spinal cord injury and disease system of care that's enduring that earthquake, and we're testing its foundation. How did we get there? What happened? Now, given all that's happened, we can talk about Phoenix, we can talk about Toma, we can talk about all the other major things, but I'm talking about what I see when I go to your individual facilities and I talk to the nurses about morale. I talk to leadership about making the foundational mission a priority. I'm talking about when access to care is denied. I know you all sincerely believe you show it. I believe that. And the question today, though, is it enough? I don't believe it's enough. Not with what's going on today. So let's take compassion a step further and separate the power to heal from another critical aspect of care that we consider important. Empathy. The psychological identification with or vicarious experiencing of feelings, thoughts, or attitudes of another. And who are the another in this case? Veterans who suffered trauma, who suffered disease, combat trauma, sexual trauma, exposure. This is who we're talking about. Now, how is empathy different from compassion? Unlike compassion, empathy is not about alleviating suffering. It's about something rarely, if ever, found outside of the VA, a military cultural competency that understands veterans, You won't see it outside the VA in many cases. It's your competitive edge. When you're talking about competing with other systems, that's the edge you have, if you know what it really means. But the question is, do we know what it really means to be empathetic? And what role does it play in your role as healers? That's the question we're going to test this morning. So I want to do that by revisiting my journey, taking you on my journey. So I want you to bear with me. Close your eyes for a moment and stretch. Close your eyes. I see you. Trust me, empathy. And I want you to stretch your imagination. Open your eyes. That's how fast it happens. In a blink, no warning. That quickly. And at this point, stop moving. This side of the room, you're quadriplegics. Stop moving, please. On this side of the room, you're paraplegics. You're lucky ones. You're lucky. You get to move your arms and legs. But you can't move anything else. And you can't move. Bear with me. If your nose itches, you can't move. You can't. You're paralyzed. You have to accept it. Over here, you can wave your arms, you can scratch, but don't stretch your legs because you can't. And you just have to accept it. This is empathy, and I want you to take this journey with me for just a few minutes. While you're sitting there newly paralyzed, right now, as you are, the next sound you'll hear after that accident you just suffered, it's not a chainsaw or a lawnmower. It's the jaws of life. Your car is cut open like a can. The things you remember are the smell of twisted, burnt metal. And it's going to haunt you for the rest of your life every time you have that smell. Your body is extricated from the vehicle. And the last sound you'll hear before going completely unconscious is this. And then it fades to black. And the first sound you'll hear when you wake up is this is what it sounds like to be maintained by a machine. When you wake up to that sound, that's what woke you up, in fact. And these are the next set of sounds that will haunt you for the next few nights as you try to figure out what the heck happened while staring in the dark.
Down that peanut blazer for talking me to take this call. He's in Montreal.
Hospital sounds, misery, cheerfulness, misery, a mix of everything. You'll be visited by a litany of people. People who are in your disciplines, doctors, nurses, social workers, psychologists, nutritionists. As you face immobility, dependence, helplessness, sleeplessness, hunger, anxiety, depression, and nonstop pain. And meanwhile, your marriage, your kids, your bills, your classes, that thing you didn't get done, it all appears to freeze, but it doesn't. It simply moves on without you. And then all the pre-existing conditions, all the choices you made that got you here, the diet, oral hygiene, the addictions, your education level, sexual trauma, exposure to combat, all that now unforeseeably matters and has an impact, but now it matters. And then your own mind begins to play tricks on you. You shake your head even though you're paralyzed. Have you ever heard about the running dream that your patients have? This is the dream where typically at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, just as the sun's coming up, you're in the middle of a dream sequence where you're in a wheelchair. You now understand what happened to you, and your body starts to force you to think about what it was like before it happened to you. You're in the chair, you're rolling along, and suddenly you take the first step, you stand up. You take the first step, trot, and you're running as fast as you can. And then you wake up. And no matter how hard you try, you can't go back to sleep to get back into that body that knew what it felt like to run. This is your mind doing this to you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about my first family medical conference and the way it went. My Uncle Bill was a Vietnam veteran, gunnery sergeant. When I became paralyzed, he was the one that came and sat in on the conference, and he had a lot of pride in his nephew, Chief Warrant Officer, Marine Corps, drill instructor, and he didn't want to see me this way. And he said, "Doctor, is my nephew ever going to walk again?" "Doctor, no." My thoughts are what? That's it? It's that simple? What about the 3% that walk again? Statistics, I might be one of that 3%. You're a doctor, you're not God. How do you know? How are you so certain that you can basically define my life in 2 letters, 1 word, no? And speaking of God, why me? Why? What did I do? Does anybody even care? Now I completed rehab and tried to move on with my life, my new life. And now I'm a veteran who's homeless. Now I'm an angry veteran. Now I'm non-compliant. I'm overweight. I'm making poor dietary choices. I'm a high quad on a vent, a burden to you. I'm a veteran being denied access. I'm a veteran being denied the drug I need. I'm a veteran who needs my wheelchair fixed right now. I'm a veteran who fears retaliation if I complain. I'm an undesirable. I'm a human being, and I need your help. Please don't make me wait. Please don't make me wait a second longer. Does anyone care? I wonder if that's the last question Paul Chisholm asked before he died, alone. He's not an abstraction to me. This is a person that I talked to, touched, got to know. And I don't need to tell you what happened to him because it's right there. Here's the thing, though. He became disillusioned with the relationship he had with his providers in the VA. Some of it was because he had a traumatic brain injury. He was an opioid abuser. There were reasons. And undesirable. And he said, "You know what? I'm not doing this. I'll pay for my care in the private sector. I'll cobble it together from different sources. I'll get an attendant here. I'll have home care nursing here. I'll have wound care here." And over the course of his life, that was cut all too short by his choices, he found out the hard way. The best care is in the VA. It's in the spinal cord injury system of care for him. And he wanted to come back. The problem is, he was now a victim of his choices. And he became a victim of his choices. And he died wondering whether anybody cared about him. Now, because I care about you, I'm going to give you a gift that you can't give to me or to any of the paralyzed veterans in this room or the 60,000 men and women who served the country and now live with paralysis. Please, move your legs. Move them around. Move your arms, quadriplegics. Move them. Come on. You're doing it for me. Move your legs. Stretch. Feels good, doesn't it? And now tell me, how could anybody who's a healer ever deny access to care? Ever slow down an admission? Ever put something aside and make someone wait who will never have that gift that I've just given you? Or leave a veteran in isolation, or put policy and process and rules before compassion. I know you're all people, you have to make a living. You have to follow rules to keep your job, and you're professionals. But guess what? We're not professional patients. You don't give us our purpose. We give you your purpose. And we're why you exist. And I'm thankful that you exist. And so in closing, we talked about this yesterday. There are forces out there that want to eliminate this specialized system of care. Again, we're not talking about expanding to the community and all the things that have to happen to give greater access. We're talking about this specific system of care. And they'll move a step closer to being successful with every Paul Chisholm that we end up finding out about. Every one of those Paul Chisholms is going to be the reason. Your competitive edge in these times is your ability to provide care with compassion, but more importantly, your ability to empathize. I want to thank you this morning for empathizing with me. Thank you.